on this time, breaking down the stories every view will unwind. From left to right we'll see the light. It's balance we're chasing, no fighters fight. Good is still be talking it straight. Let's hear both sides, let's communicate. Politics and reason, let's find the truth. Good is still be here to bridge it for you. Debates, insights, it's all on the screen. Good is still be keeping it keen. Hit subscribe, stay a while, let's dive in deep with Curtis. So be the combos you need. The combos you need. Insights, it's on the screen. Curtis, I'll be keeping it keen. Hit subscribe, stay a while, let's dive in deep with Curtis. I'll be the convo's unique. Curtis, I'll be talking it straight. Let's hear both sides, let's communicate. Politics and reason, let's find the truth. Curtis, I'll be here to bridge it for you. Debates, insights, it's all on the screen. Curtis, I'll be keeping it keen. Hit subscribe, stay a while, let's dive in deep with Curtis. So be the combos you need. The combos you need. The combos you need.
Welcome. It is I, depending on what source you're seeing this on. You can think of me as Curtis Selby, your retired midnight blogger. What blogs in this case at 3:20 p.m. Or you can think of me as the voice of Northern Oklahoma. You can call me Ray. You can call me Jay. You can call me Johnny. But please don't ever call me late for supper. Let me do one more thing. I'm trying to stream to 3 different places, 2 different YouTube channels, and a Rumble channel. I hope that they're all working. I'm going to try to pin something to the chat of my regular channel. See if this works. Boom, 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 boom. Nope, it's not going to work. Okay, never mind. Oh, I see why, too. Okay, never mind. Best laid plans, all that stuff. So, that's what I get for doing all this last minute. Today is Veterans Day, or Veterans Day is Memorial Day. So the title of this podcast is going to be Unmasked Sorrow, Boundless Stars, midnight Memorial Day reflection, even though it's actually 3:21 p.m. I'm going to stop the music. I'm going to begin with the quote from which I got this title. I've been reading a lot of, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but I think it's Kahlil Gibran's poem, The Prophet. And I asked Grok to give me some lines from that poem that would apply to Memorial Day. the one that it shared that I liked best was, "For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? What is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered?" It's a poetic way of looking at it, maybe the right way of looking at it, but I can't help but think that some of those who gave their lives taking, trying to preserve our freedoms, they might think of it in a slightly different way. And Accounting Sheep, hail and well met. You are letting me know the new channel is live. Thank you very much. And Connie Cleary's over there as well. Hail, Connie Cleary. Thank you very much. You are both too kind. I'm not sure why Connie's comment is not showing up on StreamYard, but anyway, she is there, and Accounting Sheep is there, and that is enough for me to do whatever random silly thing I feel like doing. So I'm going to begin with the history of the day. I had done a post last year, but YouTube did not like it, said it was harmful, said it was full of violence and stuff. So I will not be filling this episode with images from battle or anything like that. I will just simply give you a thing on the history of Memorial Day. Boop, 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 boo, boo, boo. Last minute preparations. It's what's good for everything. And I will take as my source history.com because I like me some history. Let's see here. Let's cover up. So yes, my thumbnail comes from the Five Finger Death Punch song, Wrong Side of Heaven. I desperately tried to get several different AIs to alter it so that it wasn't quite just that, but all of them said the same thing. This is copyright. You can't alter it. So I had to jump through some hoops and hold my mouth right. And I finally got something that is still third rate, but at least wasn't just me stealing the thumbnail from that video. May not be much better than that, but at least it's not just a cut and paste, copy and paste. Share. Let me share my screen and we shall talk about the history of Memorial Day. Here we are, all these many soldiers who passed away. This is from Getty Images. It tells us a lot. I have no idea where that's at. I should know probably, but I don't. Memorial Day is an American holiday, observed on the last Monday of May, honoring the men and women who passed away while serving the U.S. military. Memorial Day 2025 falls on today, Monday, May the 26th. Originally known as Decoration Day, and it originated in the years following the Civil War and became an official federal holiday in 1971. Many Americans observe Memorial Day by visiting cemeteries on memorials, holding family gatherings, and participating in parades. Unofficially, it marks the beginning of the summer season. I know last year I was actually terrified. Maybe I shouldn't put it that way, but I was fearful. I was concerned that we might end up in a civil war by now, and I'm very gratified that we have not. So you can say whatever you want. Maybe Orange Man is bad, but we're not in a shooting war. So I thank God for that. Whether that's because of or not because of Orange Man, I know we can all debate. I'm not really going to worry about it here. The birthplace of Memorial Day and early observances. The Civil War, which ended in the spring of 1865. See, we even got troops here. Look at that. Claimed more lives than any conflict in U.S. history. And they didn't word that quite right. That it claimed more lives than any. It claimed more American citizens' lives than any conflict in U.S. history. Obviously, World War I and II both blew it away in terms of casualties, just not American casualties. It required the establishment of the country's first national cemeteries. By the late 1860s, Americans in various towns and cities had begun holding springtime tributes to these countless fallen soldiers, decorating their graves with flowers and reciting prayers. It is unclear where exactly this tradition originated. Numerous different communities may have independently initiated the memorial gatherings, and some records show that one of the earliest Memorial Day commemorations was organized by a group of formerly enslaved people in Charleston, South Carolina. One of the things that bugs me about YouTube not liking my video from last year was I actually shared that. It was Black people who helped honor the fallen. I thought that it was cool that we should come together as different races, but no, YouTube thought that was harmful content. So, us treating each other with respect is harmful. Remember that. Anyway, enslaved people in Charleston, South Carolina, formerly enslaved, less than a month after the Confederacy surrendered in 1865. Nevertheless, in 1966, the federal government declared Waterloo, New York, the official birthplace of Memorial Day, because of course they did. Waterloo, which first celebrated the day on May 5 of 1866, was chosen because it hosted an annual community-wide event during which businesses closed and residents decorated the graves of soldiers with flowers and flags. I believe we are looking here at the decoration of the tombs of the unknown soldiers. If you can see that. I don't know if you can. I'm not going to play it because I'm just way too tired of being dinged for stuff. So, but if you can see it, it does look cool. Decoration Day on May 5, 1868, General John A. Logan, who was not at all involved with the Logan's Run movie, leader of an organization for Northern Civil War veterans, called for a nationwide day of remembrance later that month. The 30th of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land, he proclaimed. The date of Decoration Day, as he called it, was chosen because it wasn't the anniversary of any particular battle, which is kind of hard to do. If you study Civil War history, it's hard to find a date that didn't have a battle on it somewhere. On the first Decoration Day, General James Garfield, who later became president, made a speech at Arlington National Cemetery, and 5,000 participants decorated the graves of the 20,000 Civil War soldiers buried there. Many northern states held similar commemorative events and reprised the tradition in subsequent years. By 1890, each one had made Decoration Day an official state holiday. Southern states, on the other hand, continued to honor the dead on separate days until after World War I. See, hey, Jeff B., howdy. Good to see you. I am doing a random stream for Memorial Day because I can. And over here on the new channel, but unfortunately I can't highlight you guys because StreamYard is being poopy, we have Gorilla Censored Thoughts, Kaplaw. I hope that you caught a big fish, sir. He's saying, oh, look, baby calf is being made out of in that field. Right on. So wrong. Why does it feel so right? Which is probably what the cow was thinking. Okay. Memorial Day, as Decoration Day gradually came to be known, originally honored only those lost while fighting in the Civil War. But during World War One, I have no idea why we've got a big snake in what looks like Madison Square Garden. I guess they're doing the New Year. I don't know. During World War One, the United States found itself embroiled in another major conflict, and the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars. That's too distracting. And that's distracting too. Chuck Norris, I avoid these three foods like the plague. And then it has a kind of oddly shaped banana, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of scared. The holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, including World War II, Vietnam, Korean, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. For decades, Memorial Day continued to be observed on May 30th, the date General Logan had selected for the first Decoration Day. But in 1968, Congress brilliantly passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which established Memorial Day as the last Monday in May in order to create a 3-day weekend for federal employees. If you're not a federal employee, you can get stuffed. The change went into effect in 1971, so just the May before I was born. The same law also declared Memorial Day a federal holiday. Yes, I finally figured it out, Jeff B. If I'm really smart, I'll highlight you. Hey, there you go. Look at that. You're simulcasting to both channels. Yes, I figured that this surely would be a stream that I wouldn't get stupid political on, so it should be safe to stream to both places. And while I don't want to completely abandon the old channel, the new channel is the one that's going to need love, unless and until YouTube decides that it's okay to monetize the old one. Because, the old one had harmful content like, black people were really good to white people after the Civil War, even though the white people were sometimes big poop heads. That was harmful content. Don't forget. People being kind to each other, that's harmful content and must be stopped at all costs. All right. I'm not bitter. Take it back. Memorial Day traditions and rituals. Chuck Norris staring at a phallic-looking banana is not one of these traditions or rituals. The internet makes me so sad. Cities and towns across the United States host Memorial Day parades each year, often incorporating military personnel and members of veterans organizations. Some of the largest parades take place in Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. Americans also observe Memorial Day by visiting cemeteries and memorials. Some people wear a red poppy in remembrance of those fallen in war, a tradition that began with a World War I poem. It's usually my tradition to read that poem, and if you all have the patience, I will do that here, but I'll finish the thing about the history first. On a less somber note, many people take weekend trips or throw parties and barbecues on the holiday, perhaps because Memorial Day weekend, the long weekend comprising the Saturday, Sunday, and the Saturday and Sunday before Memorial Day and Memorial Day itself, unofficially marks the beginning of summer. Blah, 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 blah. I don't say blah, blah, blah. Welcome to Waterloo, New York. Birthplace of Memorial Day, May 5th, 1866. Visit the Memorial Day Museum at 35 East Main Street. There it is. The U.S. federal government declared Waterloo, New York, the official birthplace, blah, blah, blah. We've got somebody folding a flag here. He kind of looks like, I don't know, for some reason I'm thinking of a young Gorilla's Censored Thoughts, only a lot whiter and with a weird beanie on his hat. I don't know. Oh, look, they're a bunch of women. I'm sorry. I am very sorry, Gorillas. If you take affront, I will totally understand and feel like a jerk. But anyway, women wearing the American flag. I guess nobody told them that that's actually a little bit disrespectful, but it's okay because women in American flags can also be kind of hot. One girl holds a flag of the United States for a Memorial Day honor guard. 5-year-old Imogene Laura Stone, a daughter of a World War I veteran, sits on President Franklin D. Roosevelt's desk and pins a Memorial Day poppy to his lapel in May of 1933, proving he is the better president. He did not sniff her hair. I'm sorry. I had to. A crowd watches an army parade on Memorial Day 1942 in Washington, D.C. I think I see the time-traveling hipster in there somewhere, or maybe it's Waldo. I don't know. A U.S. soldier plays taps at Luxembourg American Cemetery on May 30 of 1946 in a Memorial Day service honoring the American soldiers who gave their lives in World War II. A Memorial Day parade in Gray, Maine features 17 empty chairs. Empty chairs and empty tables. Each is painted with a veteran's name and displays a helmet. A veteran sits in L.A., California cemetery in 1992. U.S. war veterans and active duty personnel watch U.S. Air Force fighters on the deck of the Intrepid Sea Air Space Museum in New York, New York, during the 1997 Memorial Day ceremony. Boy Scouts distributing American flags at Veterans Cemetery, Los Angeles, California, 1993. I had an interesting talk the other day on Resolute Germs channel with Admiral Teague. Talking about how spiffy the Boy Scouts are. That's all I'm going to say about that. A volunteer at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial comforts a U.S. Marine who lost a friend during the Vietnam War in Washington, D.C., May 26, 1996. A young woman lies down on the grave of U.S. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Noah Peer. Peer was killed February 12, 2010 in Afghanistan. So there it is. We have the succinct-ish history of Memorial Day. And hey, Whiskey Flats at Garden Railroad. Hail and well met. I hope you are having a I don't know about wonderful. It's always hard to feel like saying, I hope you have a wonderful Memorial Day. I do want you to have a good day, but it's almost like, there should at least be a little bit of somberness, a little bit of thoughtfulness. I hope and think that most of the soldiers wouldn't want us to just wail in despair, but at the same time, I think it is good, and I know most of us believe a similar way, to at least pause and consider why the day exists. Howdy at John Ponterero. Whiskey Flats Garden Railroad corrects the article, or maybe perhaps I should just say that he amends it. Those are Webelos. Webelos wobble, but they don't fall down. He also says there's a scale replica of the Vietnam Memorial in Enid. I think I had heard that, but have yet to visit it because I don't know. Because I don't. Let's see what's going on in the other channel. Let's see. People are saying hello. People are saying kapla. I wish I could highlight it. It really bugs me that StreamYard won't let me highlight the stream in the other channel. The YouTube overlords are listening. Shh. Gorilla Censored. That was from Jeff B. Gorilla Censored Thoughts. Trip wrecked after I fell in. I know, and I am very sorry about that. Gorilla Censored Thoughts. No, they aren't listening. I haven't been censored yet. Connie Cleary says that that's a good thing. And Gorillas says, we got a mobile Vietnam memorial that drives through every once in a while. Очень interesting. So, the second thing I wanted to talk about or share is the poem on Flanders Fields. It's just kind of a tradition of mine. I know I've done it all the time. If you've heard me say it once, you've probably heard me say it 1,000 times. But let's see. Yes, this is it. I just like to do things right, doggone it. So here we go. We shall talk about the World War I origins of the poppy as a remembrance signal. Here we have a bunch of spiffy the ex-Kaiser would have to possess more than 9 lives. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, see, back then you could put stuff up like Kaiser's coffin, and everyone understood that you weren't, you could strangle the Kaiser in effigy. Now I will probably get dinged by YouTube just for talking about it. The World War I origins of the poppy. It started with a poem written by a World War I brigade surgeon who was struck by the sight of the red flowers growing on a ravaged battlefield. Here we've got a poppy. Poppies make you sleep. From 1914 to 1918, World War I took a greater human toll than any previous conflict, with some 8.5 million soldiers dead of battlefield injuries or disease. The Great War, as it was then known, also ravaged the landscape of Western Europe, where most of the fiercest fighting took place. From the devastated landscape of the battlefields, the red poppy would grow and, thanks to a famous poem, become a powerful symbol of remembrance. Across northern France and Flanders, which is not the character from The Simpsons, it's like part of northern Belgium, the brutal clashes between Allied and Central Powers soldiers tore up fields and forests, tearing up trees and plants and wreaking havoc on the soil beneath. But in the warm early spring of 1915, bright red flowers began peeking through the battle-scarred land. I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but Papaver-Rius, or something like that. Known variously as the Flanders poppy, corn poppy, red poppy, and corn rose. As Chris McNabb, author of the Book of the Poppy, wrote in an excerpt published in The Independent, which the source here is actually history.com, the brilliantly colored flower is actually classified as a weed, which makes sense given its tenacious nature. We've sure got a lot of Kaisers in effigy. Anyway, I better close that down. YouTube's going to blame me for it. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, a Canadian. Where's PvP when you need him? PvP should be here. You know what, Gorillas? You should tell PvP to get his butt in here so you can hear about how great Canadians are. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Jeff B, so you're going to change censored to uncensored? And Gorillas responds with, wait, maybe they are, because Curtis didn't read one of the comments. Did I miss a comment? Crap. I'm sorry. Like I say, the StreamYard is streaming it, but it's not sharing the comments. I guess it overwhelms it, maybe, when there's more than two things being streamed. I don't know. Gorilla Sensor Thoughts. Jeff, there's still time. There's still time. And Connie Cleary, I know, right, Curtis? Indeed. Indeed. I don't remember what I'm right about, but I will just smile and nod and act like I know what I'm doing. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, a Canadian who served as a brigade surgeon for an Allied artillery unit spotted a cluster of poppies that spring, shortly after the Second Battle of Ypres. McCrae tended to the wounded and got a first-hand look at the carnage of that clash, in which the Germans unleashed lethal chlorine gas for the first time in the war. Some 87,000 Allied soldiers were killed, wounded, or went missing in the battle, as well as 37,000 on the German side. A friend of McCrae's, Lieutenant Alexis Helmer, was among the dead. Struck by the sight of red blooms on broken ground, McCrae wrote a poem in Flanders Field, in which he channeled the voice of the fallen soldiers buried under those hardy poppies. Published in Punch magazine in late 1915, the poem would be used at countless memorial ceremonies and became one of the most famous works of art to emerge from the Great War. Its fame had spread far and wide by the time McCrae himself died from pneumonia and meningitis in January of 1918. Here, pretty good-looking young guy, youngish anyway. Couldn't be terrible young. And even back then, it took a little bit of time to get your doctorate. But across the Atlantic, a woman named Moina Michael read in Flanders Fields in the pages of the Ladies' Home Journal that November, just 2 days before the armistice. Does anyone remember when that was? Let me know in the chat if you remember what that day would be. You know it's November. A professor at the University of Georgia at the time the war broke out, Michael, or Michelle, or whatever she was, had taken a leave of absence. Taken a leave of absence to volunteer at the New York headquarters of the Young Women's Christian Association. It's fun to stay at the YWCA, which trained and sponsored workers overseas. Inspired by McCrae's verses, Michael wrote her own poem in response, which she called "We Shall Keep Faith," which proves that she was not a modern woman. But my apologies to Connie Cleary. You are definitely not one of the type I'm making fun of. Whiskey Flats gets the points. Ding, 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 ding. It was indeed November 11th at 11:11 a.m., if memory serves. I'm pretty sure it was a.m. Be kind of silly to start the armistice at night. As a sign of this faith and a remembrance of the sacrifices of Flanders Field, Michael vows to always wear a red poppy. She found an initial batch of fabric blooms for herself and her colleagues at a department store. After the war ended, she returned to the university town of Athens and came up with the idea of making and selling red silk poppies to raise money to support returning veterans. Michael's campaign to create a national symbol for remembrance, a poppy in the colors of the Allied nations' flags entwined around a victory torch, didn't get very far at first. Kind of sounds a little complicated to me, but anyway. But in mid-1920, she managed to get Georgia's branch of the American Legion, a veterans group, to adopt the poppy minus the torch as its symbol. Even back then, they were trying to be conscientious about, being politically correct. Soon after that, the National American Legion voted to use the poppy as the official U.S. national emblem of remembrance when its members convened in Cleveland. Cleveland? We went through hyperspace and ended up in Cleveland? In September of 1920. Look at that. You can get the PDF for free. Awful generous of them. On the opposite side of the Atlantic, a French woman named Anna Guerin had championed the symbolic power of the red poppy from the beginning. Invited to the American Legion Convention to speak about her idea for an inter-allied poppy day, only the French would put it that way, Madame Guerin helped convince the Legion members to adopt the poppy as their symbol and to join her by celebrating National Poppy Day in the United States the following May. Back in France, Guerin organized French women, children, and veterans to to make and sell artificial poppies as a way to fund the restoration of war-torn France. As Heather Johnson argues on her website devoted to Madame Guerin's work, the French woman may have been the single most significant figure in spreading the symbol of the remembrance poppy through the British Commonwealth countries and other allied nations. Within a year, Guerin brought her campaigns to England, where in November 1921, the newly founded Royal British Legion held its first ever poppy appeal, which sold millions of silk flowers and raised over £106,000, a very hefty sum at the time, which it's not exactly chump change now, but yeah, that was a lot more back then than it is now, to go towards finding employment and housing for Great War veterans. Now we pretty much just tell them to get stuffed. The following year, Major George Housen set up the poppy factory in Richmond, England, in which disabled servicemen were employed to make the fabric and paper blooms. Other nations soon followed suit in adopting the poppy as their official symbol of remembrance. Today, nearly a century after, actually now it's over a century after World War I ended, millions of people in the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Belgium, Australia, and New Zealand don the red flowers every November the 11th, known as Remembrance Day or Armistice Day, to commemorate the anniversary of the 1918 armistice. According to McNabb, the poppy factory, now located in Richmond, England, and Edinburgh, Scotland, is still the center of poppy production, churning out as many as 45 million poppies made of various materials each year. In the United States, the tradition has developed a little differently. Americans don't typically wear poppies on November 11, which is Veterans Day for us, which honors all living veterans. Instead, they wear the symbolic red flower on Memorial Day, the last Monday in May, to commemorate the sacrifice of so many men and women who've given their lives fighting for their country. Let's check out the chat before I dive into the poem. I really don't like StreamYard not sharing the other stream. Oh, bugs me. But at least it's playing. I shouldn't complain. Gorilla Censored Thoughts. This is what I said. Wait, when did I hear change gender? So since I'm a woman now, does that mean I can get laid now without any effort? Yes, gorillas. That's exactly what it means. Personally, I've always felt that I was a male lesbian. I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, but I'm still painfully attracted to women. Jeff B. heard the English were believers of poppy seed bagels, and the seeds sprouted in areas they garrisoned. Interesting. Gorilla Censored Thoughts. The armistice went into effect at 11. My luck is the guy from Baltimore who got shot at 10:59. Yeah, that would be my luck too. Actually, my luck, it'd be 11:01, and it would be not that somebody actually shot at me, just somebody's gun went off at random. Gorilla Censored, it was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And poppy seeds will make you flunk a drug test. Also, Gorilla says, I remembered hearing about the Canadians throwing a bunch of cans of food into the German trenches, and the Germans asked for more, and they threw more cans of food than the third time the Germans asked for. Okay. More food. They actually threw hand grenades. Oh, well, okay then. If you've ever read All Quiet on the Western Front, the Germans were having a pretty darn bad time by the end of the war. I do not doubt that his descriptions are not exaggerated, because he doesn't really give a lot of details as far as millions of people perishing. He just talks about what a simple soldier was experiencing. And, I haven't been in a war, but I've been through some crazy crap, and it all lines up with the crazy crap I've lived through, just put war in the middle of it, and you got it. Let us read the poem. I am a little worried that YouTube will ding me because, this is a threatening poem, because YouTube doesn't get context or nuance. So let me first give a, whatever you call it, the public service announcement. I am not threatening to rise as a ghost out of a grave and haunt or kill anyone. YouTube, I'm reading a poem. I would love it if you took that in the context intended. I'm not bitter, Gary. Take it back. In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. I've always loved that. And yes, YouTube, I am not threatening to come back as an undead revenant to try to kill people because they weren't loyal enough to World War I troops. It's in no way part of the message. Hey, PvP's here. Sweet. A Canadian wrote a cool poem. Sci-Fi Sith Dan. Hello there. Hail and well met. Greetings. I know somebody, is it you? One of you is doing a Memorial Day thing, so I'm going to try to make this fairly short so people can go there if they want to. Please leave a link in the chat if you'd like to that stream. PvP was the beginning to think no one was doing a stream on Memorial Day. I finally, I lazed around. I grabbed a sandwich. I scratched Cassie between the ears. And then I was like, yeah, I did it last year. And YouTube labeled it as harmful content. But I'm going to try again this year and see if this time I can do it and it not be harmful content. I probably failed, but oh well. You got to keep trying. With PvP, with my luck, the guy would have a bad watch and kill me 5 minutes later. Right? Hey, where'd you go? By the way, John, the guy who wrote that was Canadian. You're correct. John McCrae. He was Canadian, indeed. PvP in Canada, Remembrance Day is on November 11th. It's still a big deal, and I'm glad that it is. That's cool. We have official ceremonies with veterans on November the 11th. What other streams are? Somebody's doing a movie watch fairly soon, if I'm not already stepping on when they're doing it, which is likely so. It depends. But anyway. What else? I've got 2 more things written here. Ha! Take that, microphone. You had it coming. Huh. I'm looking at my notes and realizing that I don't know how to count. So 2 of my favorite authors, and no, I'm really not shifting gears, I promise. Are C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. I could probably almost do just a whole freaking channel on them. I could bore you to tears with all the stuff that I know that actually delights and enthuses me, but I'm going to talk about their time in World War One, if I'm smart enough to find the website. C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, they served, but they didn't serve together. They met each other after the war. Here we go. I think I shall. There's so many good sites on this too. I hope you guys can see. There's C.S. Lewis. There's some guy. Anyway, Hemingway. That's it. C.S. Lewis, Hemingway. And you know what? I think I will go with. No, I don't. I don't think I'll go with that one. Here we go. I shall go with World War I Centennial.org. Yeah, here's they have a trailer about the movie about it. I'm not going to share that. YouTube will ding me. God forbid that I should actually share any of the stuff that would help or promote the film. And then we wonder why the film industry is hurting. An editor's note here. On the heels of the enormously successful World War I documentary, They Shall Not Grow Old, Fox Searchlight Pictures has released the first trailer of their J.R.R. Tolkien biography, seen above. The film will explore how the horrors of World War I that Tolkien witnessed were eventually channeled into, quote, a fantastical adventure story about good and evil, destiny and prophecy, which we know as his Lord of the Rings trilogy. In a recent article on the Sovereign Nations website, author Desmond Berg looks at the effects of the Great War on Tolkien and his lifelong friend, author C.S. Lewis, how both used the experience of war to shape their Christian imaginations and produce fantastic works of literature. Yeah, I don't know if you knew this, but there's a lot of scenes in The Lord of the Rings that, yeah, he put in fantastical creatures, but it's basically just, I mean, not just, but it's him artistically reliving stuff in the war. The siege of Rohan, a lot of that came from his experiences in the war. When the hobbits are crossing the marshes of Morva and they fall into the marsh and there's dead people down there. Yeah, I mean, they weren't undead things, but that actually happened to him. He was crossing a marsh in the Somme, fell into the pool, and there are just tons of dead people down there. It was horrifying. Okay, now I'm going to read. In the spring of 431 BC, wait a minute, they're shifting their gears on me. I'm getting whiplash from this gear shift. Athens and Sparta went to war. Their dispute soon enveloped the entire Greek world. Thucydides, an eyewitness to the fighting, wrote that it would be more momentous than any previous conflict, and he was right. Dragging on for 27 years. That's right, even longer than the War on Terror. Think about that. The Peloponnesian War anticipated the suffering and deprivation associated with modern conflicts. The atrocities, refugees, disease, starvation, and slaughter. The war destroyed what remained of Greek democracy and left the Greek city-states vulnerable to demagogues and foreign invasion. 100 years ago, on November 11th of 1918, another war, begun by two European states, a local squabble that escalated into global conflict, came to an end. Struggling to describe its scope and destructive power, the combatants called it the Great War. Like its Greek counterpart, the war ravaged soldiers and civilians. Over the course of 4 years, roughly 20 million people were killed. It's about 5 million a year. And I'm not going to be political, so I'm not going to say what I want to say. But the coup did not, I think, kill 5 million people in the United States in that year. Maybe it did. Somebody let me know. Maybe I'm wrong. I was thinking it was less than that, but maybe it was more. Anyway, I got political, so I'm a big dumb dodo head. Another 21 million were wounded. National economies were ruined. Empires collapsed. The war to make the world safe for democracy left European democracy in tatters. And more than that, the core commitments of Western civilization to reason, truth, virtue, and freedom were thrown into doubt. T.S. Eliot saw the post-war world as a wasteland of human weariness. Quote, "I think we are in a rat's alley," he wrote, "where the dead men lost their bones," unquote. Many rejected faith in God and embraced materialistic alternatives, communism, fascism, totalitarianism, scientism, eugenics, and modern mainstream media. Yet two extraordinary authors, soldiers who survived the horror of the trenches, rebelled against the spirit of the age. J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, who met at Oxford in 1926 and formed a lifelong friendship, both used the experience of war to shape their Christian imaginations. In works such as The Lord of the Rings, the Space Trilogy, and the Chronicles of Narnia, Tolkien and Lewis rejected the substitute religions of their day and assailed utopian schemes to perfect humanity. Like no other authors of their age, they used the language of myth to restore the concept of the epic hero who battles against the forces of darkness and will to power. Here's a spiffy image of a dapper young J.R.R. Tolkien in 1916. Pretty good looking guy. I like the stash. Wish I could grow a stash like that. So here we are. There's a whole article. I will read it if you guys have the patience for it. Let me know if you don't. Where are we at? There are people in the chat. PvP, I'm a YouTube junkie. I get lonely without my YouTube friends. I get it. I do. If I didn't have Cassie, I would be even worse. John Ponerero, I am harmed and feel endangered by your content. PvP, didn't Tolkien hate the war? Yeah, well, they both did. I can barely, I can't actually imagine it, but I can barely imagine a sane person not hating that war that was actually involved in it. The only reason I say I can imagine it is because if you ever watch the documentary, I can't remember what it's called, but they did a project from the late 90s till the death of the very last surviving World War I veteran. They got the surviving vets, as many as they could, and they interviewed them. All of them except one. Every last one of them except one said, "Oh, it was terrible. It was this. I lost my foot. I lost my friend. I had shell shock for a while, this and that." He was like, "Oh, it was bloody fun. We ran around and killed Germans. It was the best time of my life. It was bloody fun." And since he didn't kill anyone after the war, I kind of have to assume he was sane. But yeah, he was the only one that said that stuff. Yes, PvP. Hemingway drove an ambulance in the war. I almost got an article with him in it as well, but I decided I'd keep my focus. But yeah, Hemingway, the war was very formative on him and his writing too. The film industry is hurting because they choose to make bad films no one wants. Yeah, agreed. John says that Rumble is 5x5. PvP, one of my granddads fought in the war trenches in France. He shaved his head to deal with lice. Yeah, I've heard similar things. It was nasty. He was captured by the Germans but escaped. Well, I'm sorry he was captured, but good on him for escaping. You're made from tough stalks, good sir. To this day, I realize if he had died, my mother would not have existed, and I would not be here to type this. Doctor Who would not have allowed that PvP, rest assured. It would have been the cool Doctor Who from the past, not the current crappy one. The current crappy one would have, who knows what he would have done. PvP says that folks say history does not matter are fools. I agree with you. History has been one of my favorite topics since since I could read. PvP, just like folks that say their vote doesn't count are fools. One writing was won by one vote in the federal election. PvP, the war was bloody, but not fun. I tend to be of your... I concur with you on it, but I'm just sharing what this gentleman said. He was 98 and survived World War I. I'm not going to contradict him, but I respectfully, now that he's gone, disagree with him. Fixed points in time, indeed. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Gorillas, since your thoughts might do a cigar lounge, that would be cool. Lizzie Armstrong, howdy. I hope Fifi is doing well. And more importantly, I hope she's not stuck in a World War I style conflict. All the best for Memorial Day. I know Troy Pacelli did his liquid lunch today. He did. He made a spiffy announcement. So go watch that if you have not. And, see what's going on with his channel. Everybody's saying hi to Lizzie, and Lizzie saying hello to me and Cassie, who I wish was at my feet because I would show her to everybody, but she's over on the couch and blah, 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 blah. I'm actually doing pretty good today, Connie. I'm not having to work today, and I eaten without overstuffing myself, and I've had a good cup of coffee, and it's been a pretty good day. People were told they would be back from the war in a short time. Yeah, it's amazing how often that happens. Yeah, we'll have them licked in no time. All wars use the Middle East continent to access Europe. Lizzie says is just waking up Fifi. Everyone's saying hi to Fifi. And thank you, Connie. It is good that how was the wedding? Let me know how the wedding was while I go back to reading about my heroes. Basically, Lewis and Tolkien are who I would be. I know I say this about a lot of people, but very, very seriously, if I believed in reincarnation, I would think that I was C.S. Lewis reincarnated. Only evidently C.S. Lewis sinned more than he thought he did, because this life's not been the same. We'll put it that way. I'm not going to say it's been bad, just not. I'm not a college professor. I'm not a multi-million selling book author. But having said that, I've had some really hot girlfriends. So maybe it all pans out. Maybe. Back to the article. Articles. Tolkien Lewis and the Lessons of World War I. I don't think this is very long. So, and this, he's already said that. What the heck, you guys? They're trying to play with my head. Oh, I see what they're doing. It's like weird and behind some kind of maybe not a paywall, but It's behind something. So I can't read any further. Dag nabbit. So exasperating. I hate the internet sometimes. Let's see if this works. That's what we learn in the school. Okay, here we go. I got it to open. So be impressed. I actually made my tech roll this time. One of the most striking effects of the war was an acute anxiety, especially in educated circles, that something was profoundly wrong with the root stock of Western society. A sickness in the racial body. Book titles of the 20s and 30s tell the story. And I'm going to interject a side note. I was a lit major for well over a year, loving it, love literature, love reading. A lot of the depressing crap from the 20s and 30s basically is what turned me off of being a lit major. I really got tired of reading it. Maybe I was being unfair, but I was a 20-something. So the book titles tell the story. Social Decay and Regeneration, 1921. 1923's The Decay of Capitalist Civilization. 1926, The Twilight of the White Races. Same year, The Need for Eugenic Reform. 1927, Will Civilization Crash? 1928, Darwinism and What It Implies. 1929, The Sterilization of the Unfit. 1931, The Problem of Decadence. YouTube, I am not saying that these are things I am in support of. I am reading book titles. Please put it in context. The promotion of eugenics, from the Greek for good birth, began in Great Britain in the years leading up to World War I, but it gained international support in the period between the two world wars, just as Tolkien and Lewis were establishing their academic careers. The aim of the movement was to use the tools of science and public policy to improve the human gene pool through immigration restriction, marriage laws, birth control, and sterilization. The movement's first task was to educate and persuade a potentially skeptical public. I don't know why the public would be skeptical of this. Sounds lovely to me. Not. Sir Francis Galton, the British sociologist and cousin of Charles Darwin, who coined the term, explained that eugenics, quote, must be introduced into the national conscience like a new religion. It has indeed strong claims to become an orthodox religious tenet of the future, for eugenics cooperate with the workings of nature by securing that humanity shall be represented by the fittest races. What nature does blindly, slowly, and ruthlessly, man may do providently, quickly, and kindly. The success of the movement was breathtaking. In the twilight years, the paradox of Britain between the wars, historian Richard Overy writes that eugenics advocates soon represented mainstream science. I would suggest that it still does. They just call it by other names. Becoming affiliated with leading academic and scientific organizations on both sides of the Atlantic. The concept appealed, he writes, because it gave to the popular malaise a clear scientific foundation. At an international eugenics conference in Paris in 1926, Ronald Fisher, later a leading Cambridge geneticist, suggested that the new science would solve the problem of the decay of civilizations. 2 years later, at University College, London, Charles Bond, not to be confused with James Bond, argued that biological factors were the chief source of the decline of past civilizations and of earlier races. At the 1932 Congress of Eugenics in New York, an international cast of geneticists, biologists, and doctors were assured that eugenics would become the most important influence in human advancement. Always remember, trust the science. The barbarism of the First World War seemed to have put civilization on trial. In the desperate attempt to rescue humanity from itself, the science of eugenics appeared to provide an answer. What it supplied instead was a pseudoscientific rationale for racist ideologies. Benito Mussolini, who I gotta admit, as much as I hate the guy, his name is fun to say. Benito Mussolini! Benito Mussolini! Who swept to power in Italy in 1922 was the first European leader to exploit the language of eugenics to establish a fascist regime. Science and government would work together to improve the Italian race. One of Mussolini's earliest admirers, of course, was Mustache Man, because God forbid that I should say his name. Yazidism, according to Mustache Man's deputy Rudolf Hess, was applied biology. The Aryan race was the eugenic ideal, and maintaining its purity became the focus of Mustache Man's national policy. It's been a bit since I checked out the chat. Let's see what you poor folks are saying while you're listening to my angry diatribe. I'm not sure what you mean. PvP, is Memorial Day a state in the U.S.? Sure. I vote for Gorilla doing a cigar stream. John Ponterero, I was in Rumble. I was in Rumble. In fact, I'm still kind of like here. Hey, thank you, John. Holy crap! Why didn't freaking Yardstream share that? John Ponterero has generously given me a $10 Rumble super chat. God bless both John and Rumble, because YouTube ain't going to let me have it. $10, which is $10 more than I ever got out of YouTube. He's saying, hail! So there it is. PvP not working either, as my hours are down to Tuesday through Thursday. Well, that kind of sucks. I'm not going to read that one, but I need a woman for all kinds of things, but similar things, yes. John Ponterero, and you may be meaning something not as prurient as I'm thinking, but still, just in case, I won't read it. YouTube will have to work a little harder to nail me. It would be nice to nail something. Anyway. John Ponterero has Monday and Tuesday off generally. I'm trying to plug into the holiday. Usually off anyhow on Monday. Yeah, I'm usually off every other Monday, so it's still a good holiday. It feels like a holiday. PvP, the Curtis sounded like the Swedish chef for a second. I wish I could channel this stuff when I mean to. That's what they learn in Germany. I don't know. I can't do it when I want to. What's sad is the problems from a century ago are still with us. Yeah. Even worse, as governments are promoting it now. And what's great is they gaslight us and they say, oh, it's the opposition. It's the opposition that thinks that way. We don't. We're the good guys. John Ponterero snidely whiplash. Yeah, it is a state holiday. It is a state holiday. It was proclaimed in 1971 to be a 3-day, like a holiday weekend thingamabob, like Christmas. Hey, and then we have Connie Cleary in Rumble. So all the happening with it people. Okay, two of the happening with it people are in Rumble. I couldn't even make myself joke about it. You guys are just too cool for me to shaft you like that. PvP gets off whenever he can. But and look at, there is one cool thing. The new channel is showing me my stats. So the average view per duration on the new channel is 27 minutes and 6 seconds. That's a pretty long time to listen to some dummy talk about stuff. All right, who have I got? Okay, Lizzie is saying, hope you had a nice time at the celebration, Connie. Connie is saying the wedding and the reception was fabulous. Thank you for asking. Jen and Antonio looked amazing. And we've got PvP, so he's over here too. Darn closed window. Ha ha ha. I don't know. I just felt like doing that. There's a brochure the government put out that is very disturbing. Ooh. Can't post it here. Okay, yeah, go ahead and send it on Facebook if you would like. I don't have Facebook open on the computer, but I'll look at it after the stream, which will be done as soon as I read the rest of this thing. I might skip on ahead, but I'm still interested in it, so I'll keep reading for now. What's astonishing in retrospect is how little resistance the eugenics movement met, as it captured the imaginations of the best and brightest in the West: scientists, clerics, academics, jurists. But among the motley crew of holdouts were two instructors in English literature at Oxford, Tolkien and Lewis. And what I just love is how Vanity Fair had to hop up and down and say that the Lord of the Rings is a big bunch of racist tripe. And I have to bite my tongue to not say how I feel about that, because YouTube would certainly ding me for it. One of the holdouts, but now we say that he's the racist and the bad guy. Anyway, they enlisted their literary talents to confront eugenics. So okay, let me spell this out. I think most of you in this chat are intelligent enough to understand this, but just in case there's somebody who isn't, or just in case maybe one of you just rolled a 1, because that happens even with intelligent people, right? The orcs in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, number one, they are a fictional race. He is not saying literal races are better than literal races. He's saying he set up a fictional race that has literally been demoniacally altered from the way it was created to be something horrible and terrible and wicked and despicable. That's the first point that Vanity Fair fails to point out. The second thing is, this fictional race is the one that practices genocide and eugenics and all the terrible things. The good guys don't practice those things. So Vanity Fair, you can stick it up your collective beeps. Sorry, I had to say that. In That Hideous Strength, published in 1945, the concluding book of his space trilogy, and the space trilogy is pretty cool, Lewis takes direct aim at the assumptions underlying the eugenics agenda. He tells the story of an English couple threatened by a demonic force represented by the National Institute of Coordinated Experiments. or nice, attempting to take over the university town of Edgestone. The aim of the nice is to re-educate and remake humanity using the instruments of modern science in a bid for world domination. I did a talk about how it's awfully similar to some of the things we saw a few years ago, and that was harmful material. Lewis's fictional antagonists wage an all-or-nothing contest for the future of the human race. Consider this exchange between Lord Feverstone, a lord of the progressive element of the university and collaborator with the nice, and Mark Studdick, a university professor that has been drawn into its orbit. Oh, I love this. Feverstone. Man has got to take charge of man. That means, remember, that some men have got to take charge of the rest, which is another reason for cashing in on it as soon as you can. You and I want to be the people who do the taking charge, not the ones who are taken charge of. Quite. Studdick. What sort of thing have you in mind? Feverstone. Quite simple, obvious things at first. Sterilization of the unfit, liquidation of backward races. We don't want any dead weights. Selective breeding. Then real education, including prenatal education. But we'll get on to biochemical conditioning in the end. And direct manipulation of the brain. Studdick. But this is stupendous, Feverstone. Feverstone. It's the real thing at last. A new type of man. Lewis links eugenics with the totalitarian impulse. The devaluation of individuals, justified by scientific materialism, can only proceed through the coercive machinery of the state. Lewis was criticized for being anti-science. He denied the charge. Quote, under modern conditions, he wrote in response to a critic, any effective invitation to hell will certainly appear in the guise of scientific planning. Unquote. Although Tolkien shared Lewis's disdain for the eugenic vision, he had been accused of promoting racism in his fictional works. Vanity Fair. In The Lord of the Rings, the free people of Middle-earth, mostly white, do battle with beast-like orcs, sometimes described as black-skinned. Some of the races in his story, critics say, are represented as good and others as irredeemably evil. But the most evocative and moving character in his story is the Hobbit. From a race often ignored, underestimated, and denigrated by others, who emerges as the hero in the first fierce struggle against Mordor. My dear Frodo, exclaims Gandalf the Wizard, hobbits really are amazing creatures. You can learn all that there is to know about their ways in a month. And yet after 100 years, they can still surprise you at a pinch. One of the moral triumphs of the work is the willingness of the disparate races of Middle-earth to put aside their differences and sacrifice for one another in the war against Sauron. Tolkien began writing his epic story in 1937, just as fascist ideologies were dominating international politics, and continued working on it throughout the Second World War. Mussolini had invaded Ethiopia 2 years before, and by 1938, Germany's Jews had been stripped of their civil liberties. The Munich Agreement, signed that year, surrendered a portion of Czechoslovakia to Mustache Man in exchange for a promise of peace. Although Tolkien denied that his work was allegorical, he acknowledged in a 1938 letter to his publisher that his new story, quote, was becoming more terrifying than The Hobbit. The darkness of the present days has had some effect on it, unquote. One of the narrative threads of The Lord of the Rings can be read as a conscious assault on the entire racist totalitarian campaign. The key to understanding the moral universe of Lewis and Tolkien can be found in a brief exchange in The Lord of the Rings, in Aragorn's answer to Éomer, who asks how they ought to respond to the storm of evil thrust upon them. Quote, "Good and ill have not changed since yesteryear, nor are they one thing among elves and dwarves and another among men. It is a man's part to discern them." Unquote. The same vision animates Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. All of its various creatures, bears, badgers, horses, moles, mice, along with the group of English children, are summoned to rescue Narnia from despotism and restore its rightful line of kings. I didn't think he would choose this quote, but I'm kind of glad he did. Quote, "I'd rather be killed fighting for Narnia," says Jill, "than grow old and stupid at home and perhaps go about in a bath chair and then die in the end, just the same." Unquote. The perspective of these two Oxford friends is remarkable when we consider another of the pernicious effects of the First World War, the widespread erosion of the concept of individual freedom and moral responsibility. Literary critic Roger Sale had called the war, quote, "the single event most responsible for shaping the modern idea that heroism is dead," unquote. Consider what the soldiers at the Western Front were made to endure. The mortars, machine guns, tanks, poison gas, flamethrowers, barbed wire, trench warfare. Never before had technology and science so catastrophically conspired to obliterate man and nature. On average, this is something I did not know. I haven't been able to verify it, but I kind of think it's probably true. More than 6,000 men were killed every day of the war. You got two or three Tonkawas killed every day of the war. Their mutilated remains were consigned to graves scattered across Europe. The helpless individual soldiers chewed up in the hellish machinery of modern warfare became a recurring motif of the post-war literature. In All Quiet on the Western Front, 1929, which I do love the book, but it's tough. Eric Maria Remarque described a generation of war veterans, quote, "broken, burnout, rootless, and without hope." But the purveyors of fatalism found in Tolkien and Lewis implacable opponents. In the worlds they created, everyone has a role to play in the epic contest between light and darkness. No matter how desperate the circumstances, their characters are challenged to resist evil and choose the good. Quote, "Such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world," wrote Tolkien. "Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere," unquote. As soldiers of the Great War, Tolkien and Lewis endured the most dehumanizing conditions ever experienced in a European conflict. And I would argue that is World War II is terrible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to go so far as to say that World War I was worse, but I think that a solid argument can be made that it was about equivalently bad. I was hoping that he would talk more about them being in the Somme, the deadliest day that the British military ever in all of history, including in World War II, was in the Somme. Lewis and Tolkien, they hadn't met each other, but they both survived that battle. both of them lost every friend that they knew. Every last one died in that battle. So all the friends that they had after World War I's, with one exception, there was one exception. Lewis had a friend who didn't go to the war, but every friend that went to the war died in that battle. So, and yet here they are. They're the ones that are preaching hope and don't give up and fight no matter what. Maybe that's the harmful content that YouTube says I have. I don't know. Tolkien and Lewis's generation watched with dread as totalitarian ideologies threatened to dissolve the weakened moral norms of their civilizations. Others, such as Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, raised the alarm, and I love that book too, but it does seem pessimistic about the outcome. A New York Times review of That Hideous Strength discerned in Lewis a different spirit. When Mr. Huxley wrote his bitter books, his mood was one of cynical despair. Mr. Lewis, on the contrary, sounds a militant call to battle. Tolkien and Lewis possessed two great resources that helped them to overcome the cynicism of their age. The first was their deep attachment to the literary tradition of the epic hero, from Virgil's Aeneid to Malory's Morte d'Arthur. What matters supremely in these works is remaining faithful to the noble quest. You know, to dream the impossible dream, that stuff, regardless of the costs or the likelihood of victory. Quote, the tragedy of the great temporal defeat remains for a while poignant, but ceases to be finally important. Unquote. Tolkien explained in his 1936 Parisian Academy lecture on Beowulf, which, by the way, he was one of the world's great authorities on Beowulf. You should read his translation. It's pretty freaking awesome. In the end, quote, the real battle is between the soul and its adversaries, unquote. The second great resource was their Christian faith. Now, I do have to point out something that they don't point out here. Lewis was not a Christian yet in the First World War. He basically hung on just by the skin of his teeth and sheer, I don't know, just determination. He did become a Christian later. It was largely, not, maybe I shouldn't say, largely from the influence of J.R.R. Tolkien. So there were other people as well that were perhaps equally as influential, but Tolkien was the one that basically got him to understand that many, not all, but many of the arguments that we have in our current age are kind of specious and fallacious. That is not to say that you have to be Christian. I'm also not saying that Christianity is proven or anything like that. I'm just saying there are some pretty bad arguments that have been accepted, and it's like bad science. They just don't hold water. So the second great resource was their Christian faith. It was a view of the world that is both tragic and hopeful. War is a sign of the ruin and wreckage of human nature, they believed, but it can point the way to a life transformed by grace. For divine love can reverse human catastrophe. In the works of both authors, we find the deepest source of hope for the human story, the return of the king. In Middle-earth, that king is Aragorn, who brings strength and healing in his hands unto the ending of the world. In Narnia, it is Aslan, the great lion, who sacrifices his own life to restore the long-lost days of freedom. In both, we encounter the promise of a rescuer who will make everything sad come untrue. As the world marks the centennial of the end of the Great War and remembers the many lives swallowed up in its long shadow, here is a vision of human life worth recalling too. So there it is, Desmond Berg. I don't know about you. I thought that was incredibly well written. But again, I'm not saying you have to be Christian or anything. I'm just saying I thought that was spiffy keen. Now let's get caught up in the chat, and then I'm going to call it a stream. Ha ha! Connie, she's over in Rumble. Ha 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 ha. YouTube can bite my pasty white ass. Sorry. PvP. What's scary is Manny didn't get what was happening in the 30s. Yeah, that is true. John Pontareri, did they play old time rock and roll or Macarena at the reception? Yeah, there are too many people who don't get what's going on. And frankly, I doubt if any of us knows too well, but Canada is getting towards total chaos. Many Canadians that voted for a useless liberal government are still smug and ignorant, thinking life will get better. I can actually see Canada breaking apart in a few years. Alberta and Saskatchewan could do separation referendums. John Pontarero, is Alberta really ready to break apart, PvP and Saskatchewan? PvP says we need to separate in British Columbia too, but Premier Eby is a boot-licking socialist lackey. There are rumblings in Saskatchewan. The entire West gets screwed by the East. John Pontarero got that feeling, as have I, since I've been listening to some of the same people PvP has been listening to. PvP, we send billions in equalization or equization or whatever that word is, payments to the East, but really get no representation in the parliament. And that would be just frustrating as crap. Anyway, that sucks, PvP, says John Pontarero. PvP says it's like the Boston Tea Party scenario developing. Hey, I wouldn't pour that tea out. I'd take it home and drink it, which is probably why I'm not a revolutionary. PvP will move to Alberta if they separate. Oh, that's interesting. Canada was a great country when I was younger. Now it's going down the drain. I remember thinking of it as a great country. Well, I mean, yeah, you and I are of a similar age, but I remember in the 90s, I was like, Canada's pretty cool. I might just move there. Now, with respect, I'm kind of glad I didn't. John Pontarero, sounds like a plan. You're always welcome here in Pennsylvania, or you could come to Oklahoma. Lots of cheap land out here. We have crap for healthcare, but we have lots of cheap land. Did I skip something? No, I didn't. PvP, war is humanity at its most stupid. Agreed. I'm very much for the troops, but war is, sometimes you have to defend yourself. You do. But in the end, war just proves that somebody is a dumbass. It may not necessarily be you or me, but somebody's a dumbass. Sad thing is we've had thousands of years of war. It still continues. Humans can be very intelligent. Why do we still have wars and leaders that let their egos control their minds? Why war is considered noble has never made sense. And I used to believe that when I was a kid because I was a dumbass kid. But now that I'm grown, yes, I read stories about people who survive incredible things like Das Boot, that movie. Those guys, I got to say, even though they were on the wrong side, my hat's off to them just for their sheer tenacity to survive. But there was no nobleness in the actual cause. There was no nobleness in, hey, let's invade another country and take it. That's just pettiness and sad crap. It's only noble to the leaders and upper class that never got blood on their hands. My granddad didn't see it as noble. He got on a ship with his wife and my mom in 1929, came to British Columbia, as far away from Europe as he could get. Well, good on him. And Connie has evidently got a bird because she's saying cheep, 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 cheep. Either that or she realizes how cheap my efforts are. I don't know. PvP as a kid in the 60s, my hometown was like Mayberry. 15 years ago, it turned into tent cities and drug-addicted panhandlers. Let's see what's going on in the chat in the other channel. Lizzie Armstrong. Our indigenous folk were in 2 world wars, did not get to vote. Oh, that sucks. They did not get to vote as citizens here until 1969 with Dr. King's movement. Oh, Lizzie, you're much too kind. I'm really just reading a bunch of other people who are more intelligent than me, but I hope some of the commentary was useful and or entertaining. Sounds like Curtis could do a master's in political science. That's very kind. You and Connie are both very kind. Lizzie Armstrong, over 62,000 Australians were lost in World War I. That's tragic. Eric Bogle wrote, the band played Waltzing Matilda. Yes. After attending Art Anzac Day, April 25, here in Australia. Connie, Lizzie is drinking either tea or coffee. And, oh, Lizzie, you're really way too kind. Really smart, nice guy. No wonder he has the lovely Cassie. Well, I lucked out with Cassie. John Ponterero says he spent all of his luck on a good wife. I spent all my luck on a good dog. PvP has great respect for the troops. They are true heroes. I'm not sure. Oh, oh, I see what you're saying. Curtis is not cheap. I may be easy, but I'm not cheap. John Ponterero said it sounded like his kind of reception. I must have missed something in the chat there. What did I miss? Let me get over to Rumble here because I'm missing something. Oh, they did play old time rock and roll in Macarena. So yeah, my kind of reception. Da 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 Macarena. I don't know Spanish, but I like to Macarena. Da 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 da. Hasta buena. Hey, Macarena. Canada made a huge contribution to World War II. They did. They did. You guys lost a lot of people in that war. It's like, I hate what has been happening because, look, I know nobody's perfect, and the American soldiers could be irritating and so on and so on, but it really did seem like there was a closeness from about World War II till somewhat recently between America and Britain and Canada, Australia. I don't know what to say about South Africa. I need to do more research about them. Don't forget, James Dillon was there on D-Day. Correct. Well, my friends, I think I have said all that I feel like saying. I don't know that I've got anything to sum it up with except that war sucks and is sad. If we really were evolving, I would hope that we would evolve beyond war, but maybe we won't, or maybe it will be many, many thousands of years before we do. I would love that Star Trek Utopia thing, but war is at least between humans, is going to have to be something we get over if we're ever going to get there. Also, we're going to need some spiffy dilithium crystal, space magic, nearly infinite sources of energy. And then maybe we'll have it. You're very welcome, Connie. PvP, Scotty lost a finger, would have died without a cigarette case. Interesting. Thank you. I'm going to call it a stream because, one, I'm getting tired, but two, much more, and I'm just going to get a swelled head. I'm the best. Hello, ladies. PvP, he survived, and we got 3 seasons with him. God bless Scotty. All right, let's thank and promote everyone, at least in the StreamYard chat. I think, with possibly the exception of Lizzie, I think everyone's in here. But I'll thank you too, Lizzie, because you're spiffy and Fifi is gorgeous. Thank you very much, Accounting Sheet. Please check out this gentleman's content. He's got some wonderful parodies out there. And I'm going to have to check his other operation one of these days. Quit staring at the walls and watching YouTube videos and actually check on my friends. Jeff B., thank you very much for the kindness and the comments. Whiskey Flats, check out his content. He's been putting out videos of spiffy toy trains in the garden and incredibly cute puppies. And by the way, if you're interested in a cute puppy, he's got, I don't know that he has them for sale at the moment, but about every year or so, when they have their puppies, they're for sale. So, Weeblos wobble, but they don't fall down. Sci-Fi Sith Dan, another wonderful gentleman here with great content. Go and check out his stuff. Thank you for being here and for the kind comment. PvP also has some content. But he also makes great comments. So check out this wonderful gentleman here. He and Sith Dan often are on the panels with Mikey Susie 4 and Gorillas and Resolute Germ and Larry and a host of other wonderful people. Moira Kitty, Raquel. There's probably somebody really cool I'm forgetting. I always forget the cool people. I hate being old. Connie Cleary, the faithful bird woman of YouTube, and one of okay, so we had them all 3. Her, Whiskey Flats, and John Ponerero are my 3 paid members on my Patreon. So if I've even got a slim hope of making a living doing this, they're the biggest chunk of that hope right now. Check out her channel. She's got some lovely spiffy birds. Some of them are almost as cute as Fifi. And she accompanies it with nice soft Indian music. If I was smart, I would probably just put it on loop and zen out. Just, oh. And she's one of the greatest wrenches you'll ever know. Her, Lemon Pie, Lady V. Ostanese. I'm probably forgetting somebody else as well. I just make you all my wrenches because, that way, hopefully none of the jerks get through all of you. Boo-dee-doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. Boo-dee-doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. All right. John Ponerero, PvP. All right, now back to the other chat. Can't believe I finally got all 3 to go. Thank you very much, Gorilla Sensor Thoughts. Please check out this wonderful person. I believe he is going to have a cigar lounge tonight, and I will at least try to make an appearance and say hi. Tonight's going to be busy, but I will try to say hi. And you guys do too. He's also the wonderful gentleman who made my intro, and if I say so myself, it's pretty cool. So he's got that talent, he's got that programming capacity, he is good people, and he's a gorilla. So even if he didn't, you better say he is. Lizzie Armstrong, thank you very much. I hope you are having a wonderful day. I cannot remember if you have content or not, but she shows up quite often in various communities. One of the funnest communities that she shows up in is Connie's and Dino's. She will show off Fifi like I'll show off Cassie, and we all have a big old time watching these spiffy movies and throwing out memes that would probably get us banned in some communities. But I think mostly, maybe not always, but mostly we know how to kind of keep it within a fairly reasonable line. At least Lizzie has yet to block me, so I think I've kept it in bounds. Fifi heard that. She loves Connie and the birdies. Tweet, tweet. All right, guys, I haven't come up with a newer saying. It feels kind of strange to keep using the old saying when I've got to change stuff. But God bless the troops for keeping us safe. God help us not to get into any more wars. I hope that everyone has a wonderful Memorial time. I'm not saying that we have to be miserable or morose, but maybe take a moment, maybe say a prayer. If you got a few bucks, maybe look up a charity and send a buck or two to a veterans charity. I tried to put a link in the chat, but it wouldn't let me. YouTube, your content is harmful, but we're not going to let you help the troops. Okay. Thank you all very much, and see us later. If I am smart enough to push the button. There's a button here. Look at that. Look at that. There's a button. Ah! Oh, hey, wait. Just before I go. Dad Man Walking. You got here on the very, very last second. But I hope you also are having a wonderful Memorial Day. And check out this gentleman's channel and his wife, Mrs. Dad Man Walking. They have some really cool stuff and some fun watch parties. Take care. And have a good evening.